What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Viall Files. My name's Nick. How you doing? I wonder if I need to be a cult leader. Sometimes I wonder. Do you think I could?
I think you could be a cult leader.
Think I could do it? I think a lot of us could do it. I don't know.
I don't know what your cult would be, though.
I don't know.
Like the cult for people who like keep cabinet doors open.
There you go. And you ask, why would I say something so nutty? We'll get to nuts later in this episode. But we have a fantastic episode because if you are fascinated by cults, as I think most of us are, and or maybe we saw the documentary called The Vow on HBO, and the sex cult that was NXIVM, or is NXIVM, we have two of the stars, I guess you'd call it, from the show The Vow, Sarah and her husband Nippy, who were very high up and part of NXIVM and interacted and knew Keith Raniere, who is now in jail for, I think, life. And we get in talking about cults and their experience in NXIVM and what it's like to be in a cult, how we can avoid joining cults, what's the difference between being a little bit culty versus like a full-on cult, you know? Because
being a little bit culty.
You know, because cult, short for culture, and every company organization likes to have a strong culture, right? A reason like why. Yeah. And I think the lines get a little blurred, but we have a fascinating discussion with Sarah Nippy, and we were so thankful to have him on, and I think you guys will really enjoy this episode. So I'll stop talking about that, and let's just get to the episode. Well, before we do, support our cult and buy our merch.
It's a little bit culty.
I mean, like, you know.
Yeah, walk around wearing our shirts.
Tune into our episodes. Listen to me talk about how you should, like, control your relationships. I don't want anything in return other than your happiness. It's probably something a cult leader would say. Anyway, it's a fascinating discussion. And so let's get to it. Sarah, Nippy, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on. We're very excited to have you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
I'm sure you've gotten this reaction a lot, but it was mesmerizing watching you guys on The Vow. It was kind of a very eye-opening series. It made you think. It was a really kind of a deep look at cults and these groups, and it really, it seemed to be the big question about The Vow was, how does one find themselves in this group or a cult, and you know, it was kind of from the point of view of you guys who have left the cult, and I don't feel like we've been able to hear a lot of stories from people in your position before. It's always like people outside the cults, or, you know, the horror stories of, you know, when you had the Waco, Texas, and then you go behind the scenes. So it was very interesting to hear you guys talk about it, and it started to bring up a lot of questions of like, well, how could anyone find themselves in this situation? And so I really appreciate you guys coming on, and thought it'd be a great discussion to learn more about what a cult is, how does one get into a cult, what it's been like for you, and how can we, you know, just kind of become more aware of these types of environments.
Great questions. And I think largely you don't hear from people like us, because when most people wake up from the fact that they've been in a cult, they're very embarrassed, which we of course were, and have a lot of shame, and they just want to, you know, move on with their lives or forget it ever happened. So it's,
or deny it.
Or deny it. Yeah. It's a hard thing to admit that you've been conned or duped. And to see like how that happened. And most people actually don't educate themselves, but part of our healing and getting past all this is sharing our, you know, what our experience was with the world, so other people don't do it, get into the same experience, but also to have a little bit more compassion for other people who have. And it's education and sharing our experience is really why we're still talking, even, because if I'd had this template, if I'd seen The Vow on HBO, I wouldn't have probably made it past my first day in my first training.
Or signed up.
or signed up at all.
So maybe let's start there, because I know you talked a little bit about it on the vow, but what was kind of those, how did you guys get recruited, so to speak? I know you guys have used that word a lot, and I even listened to your podcast a little bit, Culty. Like, how did you guys get recruited? What was that first couple days like? And were there ever moments looking back where you thought, this is a little weird, but whatever, I'm going to go along with it? Or was it completely just like, oh, this is cool?
It's case by case. And I think that's the most important thing, the distinction to make is it's case by case. In my scenario, I had run into an old high school girlfriend at a party, and she had told me she was a part of it. And she had told me, this organization's great. It's all the things you talked about when we dated, because I had books on leadership, John Kennedy. I played quarterback in college. I had every book on how to be the best quarterback. I was always just digesting stuff to make me better at what I was doing. And she was right in that regard. Like, I was interested in that, and everything I was doing was, trying to become more successful in what I was pursuing. The way she described it, I even said, I'm not going to do your fucking cult.
Really?
And she was sensitive to that, and I was still interested in her romantically. So there was a lot of things that, in hindsight, I think she may have leveraged to get me to come do it. I went and did it. I thought it was weird, and I was more interested in just kind of getting out of there. But there was also a goal setting aspect to it, which was pretty interesting to me.
Yeah. Like having that sports background almost.
Yeah. Just like boom, boom, boom. And that's the kind of stuff I subscribe to. And there were some interesting people that were holding you accountable in certain assumptions and how you were going about goal setting. And it's always good to have another set of eyes on you. And a lot of it was valuable. I'd say it was about 50-50, but I thought there was stuff that was weird, but nothing that was overtly offensive.
Sure.
Like the bowing sashes and Vanguard was like, I'm not going to fucking do that. And I was involved with the organization about 1.5 years, 2 years before I was deuces. I pieced out. I was like, there was nothing in it at that point in the organization when I left in around 2003. And I didn't leave under bad terms. I just was looking around and go, the only place you could take the curriculum was in upstate New York. I was in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
I was going up on weekends to, check in on my goals, take a class or two, and then go back to the city. There was a group of us doing it. And I just thought, this is too much time and energy to be doing that. And I left, and it felt like a floundering organization with poor leadership. And I wasn't the one who was going to spearhead that brigade of bringing Vanguard sashes and all that stuff to New York City, particularly when people in New York City were just like, fuck this. Like, so I kind of felt, good luck, best of luck to you. I think what you guys are doing is okay. And left under those circumstances. Cut to 3-4 years later, I decide to relate to the organization when they have a new training, I'll take one here and there.
Yeah.
And I decided to take one, and I think it was late December of 2005, January 2006. They kind of overlapped, I think. And the organization was drastically different in about 3 years. It had expanded to Mexico City, Monterey. It had gotten a lot of people in Los Angeles, a lot of people in acting, directing, and film and television, people that were more credible to me.
Yeah. They're more like notable people. You're like, oh, well, if they're joining, like, I don't know, it can't be that bad.
So in a lot of ways, my skepticism was kind of washing back up on my shore, and I was eating my words a little bit. I was like, oh, this did catch on.
Yeah.
This did. In a lot of ways, I was like, I was wrong. This actually did, gain some momentum. And I ended up going back to LA in around August of 2006. Mark Vicente, who's in the Viall, came out and said, listen, we have a film project. Keith mentioned you. He wants you to, be in it. And that was supposed to impress me, and it didn't, because I wasn't enamored with Keith. I was enamored with what I felt like the organization was attempting to do. And,
sure.
And I didn't believe the organization when I left was capable of doing it. But it was kind of proving to me, hey, this is gaining some traction here. It might be, and if it's work and they're paying for me to come back, they're paying to move me back. They shipped my car, they shipped everything back, and they paid for me to live in Albany, New York until filming. So I didn't have any real reason to think this guy was
Full of shit.
shit, when they were actually doing what they were promised at that time.
Yeah.
So, I was handed a good hand and thinking I was playing in a fair game, if I'm going to use the metaphor of a card game. But they were setting me up to, take my money, I guess, like a pool shark or something like that. So that's kind of
keeps almost playing the long game, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He actually taught us about that. There was a whole module he taught us about people who do this type of thing, like sociopaths essentially, and how they get the greatest pleasure of destroying you slowly over time.
Actually, Kristen Keefe, the person who had his first child, says in the vow, I believe, she quotes him as saying, Keith always said the best sociopaths are the ones who are patient.
Yeah. I remember that quote. Yeah.
So,
but
hearing all that to me is what, in reconciling my delusion at the end of this, that's pretty much when I went back and I looked at all the markers. I was like, that's when I got played.
Yeah.
And he also, like, our situations, how we got in are very different. Mark Vicente invited me at a film festival, but the overlap is that we both trusted the person who invited us, and that's how these things work. Same
like
with
through
MLM.
a friend, kind of.
Yeah. It's like it's all through leveraged trust. And
it's weird because it's like our friends are a reflection of us. You're like, well, if my friend's in it, like they can't be crazy. Like they're not. I mean, sure, this is nutty, but like I wouldn't be friends with someone who would join a cult, kind of thing.
Right.
And then so you're like, well,
that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, cults are totally nuts. They are. They're so nuts. But what's great? Nuts are great. Nuts. And when I'm talking about nuts, I'm talking about nuts.com. That's right, the simple and convenient way to have nutritious, delicious, and healthy nuts, dried fruit, flour, grains, and so many high-quality foods delivered straight to your door in record time. Nuts.com just isn't for nuts lovers. I mean, if you are a nut lover, I mean, you probably know about nuts.com because...
Or a meat lover.
It's nutty good. It's your one-stop online pantry shop. I talked to the CEO of nuts.com. This gentleman was so passionate about the quality of his nuts. Well, think about that.
I love it when people are passionate about the quality of their nuts.
No, but they really, I mean, they do have delicious snacks. I think people respect you more if you serve them quality nuts at your home as like a little, and then good beef jerky.
No, the jerky's so good.
I'm chewing on a nut right now. I apologize,
I'm
people.
chewing on the jerky.
They have over 4,000 products to choose from. They really, it's some of the most wonderful and outrageous and delicious snacks you can think of. They also have vegan and gluten-free options. Fast delivery. Most orders shipped the same day. Fresher products than the supermarket means fresher food, fresher snacks, and people will just be like, "Oh, you must be a high-end person to give me these high-end snacks." But you don't need to spend high-end money. That's the important thing. So go get your nuts at newnuts.com. That's a mouthful. No pun intended. Customers get free shipping on your first order when you text FILES, F-I-L-E-S, to 64,000. So text FILES, F-I-L-E-S, to 64,000 to get free shipping on your first order from nuts.com. That's FILES to 64,000. Terms apply. Available at nuts.com/terms. Well, listen, if you accidentally found yourself in a cult, or maybe just had a shitty boyfriend, you're full of anxiety, or maybe you just need someone to talk to, BetterHelp is here for you. I mean, I feel like I would need to talk to a therapist if I joined a cult.
The segues write themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they really do.
Great.
Cult leaders, not therapists. Important note. And even if they claim to be. But BetterHelp has some of the best therapists in their fields for you to talk to at your convenience. No matter what you're dealing with, anxiety, work problems, money problems, girlfriend, boyfriends, LGBTQ struggles, again, really doesn't matter. Your feelings are your feelings, and you deserve to talk about them with someone who will help you process them in a way that will make you feel better. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they can make it easy and free to change counselors if need be. You go up, you sign up, you take a quick quiz, they'll assign you to the person they think is most appropriate, and off you go. You don't have to leave your home. You just flip open your phone, your laptop, your iPad, and in minutes, you will be talking to a healthcare professional that help you take your worries away. Visit betterhelp.com/viallfiles. That's VIALLFILES, and that is better, HELP, help, and join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have used BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Viall Files listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/viallfiles.
For me, my first few days of the intensive, I was very skeptical. I was very closed. I was very much like, this is cheesy. It's tacky. It's bullshit. And because, I trusted Mark, and Mark had good intentions. Like, Mark didn't know all the bad shit either, but he's like, wait it out till day 3. See, try to get your money's worth, and that's after 3 days is how long it takes to get indoctrinated.
Well, that's another good point. If you put down $2,000, $3,000 for your growth, and you're going and you're not getting anything out of it day 1 or day 2, you're pissed.
Yeah.
So you want to go, well, let's see if I can get something out of this. So your psychology gets behind the fact of, okay, I made this investment. I can't really get it back. Whether you want to believe you do this or not, people do this. It's a cognitive dissonance thing.
And also confirmation bias.
Yeah.
You're looking for making it worthwhile.
And so you become more open.
Yeah. For the listeners out there, can you explain to them what cognitive dissonance is and confirmation bias is?
Okay, so I'll do cognitive dissonance.
Okay,
cognitive dissonance is basically making a decision, and then once you make the decision, it's going and finding intel and data to support making that decision.
So basically, the internet today.
Yeah.
No, but I would think that's like kind of along the same lines of conspiracy theorists as well.
Sure.
Extremisms.
Yeah.
Anyone who has extremes beliefs and you show them contrary intel and they totally deny it, then that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a brain that's kind of in its own prison. So one of the things that, there's a great podcast that I'm telling everyone about right now. It's one with a screenwriter and novelist named Greg Hurwitz, and he was on Jordan Peterson's podcast, and it's called Building a Better Democrat. And this guy does a process of going through and challenging his own belief system in a way that was pretty remarkable. I highly recommend everyone, give it a listen. But in essence, you have to really go in and find how you're wrong. And that just takes a lot of things, because if you associate your belief system, with your identity, your ego, your pride, and certain things, it's going to be hard, and that's a human thing. And you need to understand people that are trying to get you to think and believe a certain way, understand that's how human beings are wired.
Yeah.
And billions and billions of dollars go into getting people to think a certain way, and developing a sensitivity to that is only in your best interest if you want to make decisions that are more aligned with what you believe or reality based or something like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. We talk a ton about relationships on this podcast, and one of the things we discuss so much, or we hear from our listeners, is they'll talk about the time they invested in a relationship is a reason they have a hard time leaving that relationship, right? And that's very relatable for everyone listening. And, and you're essentially, that's kind of what is going on in these cults. It's like, you're like, well, I've done this already. Like, I've invested this, and we have a hard time to look deep into that, to critique it, to question it would mean that you have to acknowledge what you've put in and wasted. And that's hard for ourselves to do that.
100%. That's why people are still loyal. There's a whole group of people who are still saying Keith is innocent, that Nippy and I and all the other whistleblowers are lying, and it's a whole smear campaign and the usual bullshit, right? And that's cognitive dissonance to a T, because they can't even reconcile. What do you say, Nippy? The Mount Everest of evidence against Keith, because they're like, no, but he's good. And so that's the cognitive dissonance. And then confirmation bias, the process of looking for the data to prove that you made a good decision.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to your point, Nick, people do it with stocks. You invest in a stock and you don't want to get out because you've invested it's everywhere. So if people can humanize that process in themselves and they can do it with other people, it becomes a more respectful process. So,
another thing that was really interesting, and you guys covered it a lot, and it's something kind of goes against what are the common stereotypes and criticisms for people who join cults, is it seems like it's more intelligent people who are joining cults rather than you're stupid or naive, right? And or maybe it's a mix of both. I'm guessing it's probably overall just a mixed bag. But it was almost like, so wow, you think that's fascinating. How's it happen? And Mark talked about it, and maybe you Nippy, both you and Mark talked about it. But like Mark, like the sense of purpose it brought you. Like it's like everyone would have wanted to join NXIVM because NXIVM was about changing the world. There was almost this righteous endeavor and self-growth, and it takes an intelligent person to want to have some self-awareness, to look within. It was almost like that combination. And I don't know if you guys notice that, or is it just more of a mixed bag?
There's a lot of smart people in the world, and it depends how you define intelligence. We can get into all that. That's a whole other podcast. But there's a lot of intelligent, smart people in the world operating on a false premise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think groups like NXIVM can't just recruit people who are broken and have low self-esteem, because the company wouldn't function. They do. Really, just to back up for a second, I think anyone is susceptible. Any human who is vulnerable, and by vulnerable I mean like, going through a breakup or having some sort of life change, and if in that moment where they're maybe looking for something or craving community or wanting to be part of something or change the world, whatever, and they meet the right person. Like I heard you speak, Nick, and you're really, articulate. You give good advice and you're helping people. If I'd met you 10 years ago, I would be like, oh my God, Nick would be so great on Team Change the World. Like I would totally have tried to recruit you. So I'm so glad that we met now and not then.
Well, I thought about that too. It was like, could I have joined a cult? And me now, I'm older. I've been there. And my first response, of course not. I'm a natural born skeptic. I'm a free thinker. But then I think to myself, yeah, but 24-year-old me, I might have joined a cult. I came up from a religious background. I was like, I was going through a tough breakup. I could see where maybe, I don't know, like, you don't.
In the right moment.
In the right moment, you feel vulnerable enough,
And the right person.
And the right person. But
yes.
but to back up to your question, the right person, you have to have someone that you trust, but also like the overall thing that I really see is that these people are idealistic. I'm idealistic. Nippy's idealistic. We have hope for the future. I do meet some people who I'm like, even in my recruiting days, I never told about it because I'm like, they wouldn't be open. Like I have a family member who's like, I am who I am. I mean, there's nothing you can do to change it. I'm not going to invite him to a 5-day because he doesn't believe he can change. I believed that I could change and I wanted to change and evolve and grow, and something that I totally over as a concept, by the way, like, just chill with who I am.
If there's a paradigm for the guy, like I would never fall for that. I was this guy in my first training.
Yeah.
Arms folded. And listen, I'll tell you, that's the person that's most susceptible to it, because if you don't think it can happen to you, in a lot of ways, it makes you a candidate for it. Right. So, because you don't know what it looks like or sounds like. And often it comes in the form of a friend or someone you're interested in romantically, and they might recognize that and go, hey, check this out. And you do it for them. And then it's like, this is kind of interesting. And it's benign, and it felt benign at first. I mean, these people were homely, I was like, oh, cool. All right, whatever. And then it grew into this thing that it grew into the monster that we ended up having to take down. Yeah.
Sarah, a lot about in the Viall, you were, it seemed like one of the first or main recruiters, or you were really good at recruiting. You even, we've been talking in this podcast. When you first started recruiting, again, we kind of going back to the question I asked Nippy, it's like, when did you realize, or were you as reluctant as Nippy when you first joined, or was your experience different?
I mean, I was reluctant for the first couple of days. By the end of my 5-day, and like I said, you can be fully indoctrinated into a belief system after 3 days, which I learned about in my cult recovery.
That seems wild.
I know, it's totally wild. If you're sitting, and keep in mind, these are like 12 to 14 hour days where you're sitting, focused, listening, repeating certain things, diving into your psyche. There's a whole process I've actually learned about through a book called Combating Cult Mind Control, which explains very specifically how you get indoctrinated. We don't have to get into that, but in 3 days, if you're focused and you're open and you're willing, it can totally, basically your authentic self gets overridden by what they call like the cult identity. And that cult identity kind of takes over, but your authentic self is still in there. And that's what eventually came out. Like you see it in the Viall where I'm like, oh my God, who's this person? I need to get back to that. But I was very skeptical, but by the end of my 5-day, I had such profound shifts that I left being like, oh my God, I want all my friends to take this. Truly, from the depths of my soul, I felt like I'd found everything that was so good in the world and I wanted to share it, which is why I was a good recruiter. I wasn't, I just shared. And anyone who would listen, I would tell. And hey, I burned a lot of bridges, still repairing those bridges because I was annoying. I was a zealot.
I was just going to say, do you find that yourself, is it a lot of people that tend to like be searching for something for themselves, somebody who's trying to do like the work for themselves, or somebody who had like a crazy breakup and wants to change their life or something like that? And like, those are the kind of people who are trying to change themselves in some way that kind of like come across these programs to be like, okay, this is going to make me better.
It was both. Pretty much anytime I met anybody, my first filter was like, who are they? What do they want? What's missing in their life? And can we provide it? That's what I would think. Yeah. And in the best possible of intentions, like I thought I had this amazing curriculum, and truthfully, there were really wonderful things about it on the outside. That's how people get lured in.
Well,
people don't join. Yeah.
That's what's fascinating, because like you said, you felt and still believe, because it was true, is that like in the beginning, you felt like tangible benefits from it. Like you felt good, you felt inspired, you felt happier. Yeah. And those were real feelings, right?
Those were real feelings.
And as that can't be wrong.
No.
Right? And so that's kind of a fascinating, it's almost terrifying when you think about that was kind of the blueprint or the setup to find yourself in this environment.
Yeah. Well, I've also since learned from another cult expert, Yanya Lalich, is that the programs like this set it up for you to have this high. And it's kind of like from that point on, you're chasing the dragon. I'm like, I felt so good. And that's why like certain, I don't know, I haven't done Tony Robbins, but like there's that sort of rah, rah, rock concert, like, oh, you're the best. Yeah. Kind of pump you up. And from that point on, you want that feeling again. Yeah. And, I think also like my mom's a therapist, my dad's a counselor. I've done a lot of personal development and growth. And what I liked about it is that it was so efficient. And I felt like I went through years of therapy in 5 days. And I'm like, I have like, I've never been diagnosed with it, but self-diagnosed ADD. Like I can't sit still. I want to get shit done. I don't want to like talk about it. I want to do it. And so for me, that was a real motivator. And I really do think I did all those things were legitimate. It was just that he took all these methodologies and packaged it together in such a compact way. That was the only thing that he created that was unique. It's just he repackaged a bunch of personal development. So yeah, sorry, I tangented. What did you ask?
No, I mean, like you said, it was, it sounds like he knew what he was doing, obviously, and deliberately set it up so you could get these euphoric feelings. And it was a bit of, manipulation is a real thing. We all manipulate to certain degrees with people in our lives, and it's probably an art form that you could master and learn. Some people are more gifted at it than others, but there's certainly tactics, right? Like, you could teach someone how to manipulate someone.
We actually learned that manipulation is just communication. That's what we were told. There's good manipulation and bad manipulation. It's bad when there's a lie, but we're always manipulating. If I smile and you smile back, I just manipulated you.
Yeah.
Right.
What's funny is you watch the Vow, and what he was really good at is, kind of reverse engineering things and just kind of get it simpler and simpler. So like, well, if all this, like you said, if all this really is that, and if that's not bad, then, how can manipulation be bad? You just have to like use it responsibly.
Yeah. He made the obvious sound profound.
Yeah.
With big words, but really didn't say much. And it got to the point where it got a little stale, but because Sarah and I were leaders in the organization, Sarah more so than me, I was a little more vocal about, can we do something a little bit more here? This is a lot of lip service, a lot of meetings. I was disenfranchised and had been for a while about how shit just wasn't getting done. It was a lot of talk and a lot of meetings.
A lot of virtual work.
Yeah. So morale was low amongst leadership. And I think, that was kind of one of the things that made, once you saw something that you didn't align with, leaving very easy, and then taking it down was something we were somewhat forced into doing. They seemed to think that we went on this campaign, but when it turned into an arms race because Claire Bronfman got on a plane and was trying to get my wife arrested. So
we just skipped to the end.
Yeah.
Which one's Claire?
Sorry.
Again?
Sorry.
Claire's the Bronfman, the one that was the bank, like the heiress.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah.
They ran out of bullets.
Yeah.
They didn't really have any.
One thing I want to ask is that, like, was it deliberate as the organization grew, you had Keith at the top and then Allison Mack. I mean, I remember the first time hearing about this, and it wasn't because of Keith. It was because it was, Allison Mack, former actress of Smallville, arrested for sex trafficking. You're like, what? Like that, reading that headline was like, no, that's not possible. We don't human traffic. Certainly not someone like, it was just like, this is wild. And then you watch the Viall, you're like, oh shit, I remember this story, and like and what was fascinating is somebody who's been in Hollywood and in the entertainment business is a grind. And you guys can relate to that experience. And then you thought of someone like, there's nothing worse in this city is a small taste of success, right? And then that can be pulled away. But yet Allison Mack, what at least it was, shown in the Vow is she became even bigger celebrity within NXIVM, it seemed like. And it felt like you got Keith, who's godlike, and then you had these other leaders. It seemed like they almost got off on being the stars of. Was that deliberate or was that real or am I just, seeing it differently? Because it seemed like almost like a deliberate tactic for them. Like it made Allison feel like, well, I don't have, I'm not in Smallville anymore, but I am a rock star here.
You go first. I have my take on that. You go first.
Okay, I'll say great observation. And I think in general, Keith dangled whatever he thought the person wanted and used that to his, like as a carrot. And,
Gotcha.
like inviting Nippy out to be this lead in the film. And by the way, he didn't mention they flew him on a helicopter from Albany to New York to get fitted for suits. Like, okay, this film's happening, right? For me, I wasn't hitting it in the way that I wanted to as an actor. And they gave me this, like, I basically got the starring role in this new job. Like that they made me feel special. They made me feel good about myself. I built my self-esteem, all that shit. So I think with Allison, I mean, she chose to put aside her career so she could move to Albany to study with Keith to deepen her craft. And she thought that she was going to become a very serious, meaningful actress because of Keith. And that's total, obviously, bullshit. He's not an actor. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Excuse my language. But I think that he offered people what that he thought they wanted that would hook them. And certainly she did become a leader, and they used her as a, like you said at the beginning, credibility for other actors and actresses. She was basically a lure for other women to go, oh, I want, because Allison's got a charisma about her that some people, and a lot of, especially women, are really drawn to. They feel close to her. She's very touchy-feely. You feel like you're her best friend when you're with her. And I think that she was then used to bring in more young women, because I think ultimately that's what Keith wanted. Yeah. That's what I think.
What about you, Nippy?
I think she was put in a domain where she had a certain kind of earned authority, and that's how she was used. She didn't have an earned authority with me. I didn't really, I used to give her shit, yeah, but one of the things I liked about her is I would kind of, I don't know, how do I put this? Like, I didn't really, when she opened her mouth, I kind of tuned out, when she was in front of a room or something like that. I just kind of felt, what are we listening to? But I always felt one of the things I did like about her is, whenever I'd, tease or whatever, she was always game, and she was never like too big for, to be teased and too big for her britches. And she'd always, play along and stuff like that. And I think her story, while she's been, conditioned to fall on the sword, and she's been piled on in this whole thing, she got fucked with. She got fucked with in a big way. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, fuck that, she did these things. And she did, but it's hard for people to gain perspective on how bad the abuse was to her.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question. You kind of answered it, but it was like, do you see Allison Mack as more of a victim or more of a predator, so to speak?
Keith worked on her and enrolled her into these faux principles that he felt like he was doing. And to do it, she had to do these behaviors. And if not, it meant she wasn't on the growth path or whatever. Now, why and how she didn't have the wherewithal to make those distinctions on her own, I think, is why Keith was able to abuse her in that way. Most of us have a certain integrity to us that we go, fuck that, I'm not doing that. Right. Yeah. And I don't think Allison had enough people around her to get her to check herself I think, and actually the people around her if she did give pause to anything, I think she was manipulated into going, no, this is Keith. Don't you understand? I think because it was Keith asking, she had given her thought processes over to Keith in her decision making, whereas some people just weren't going to do that and they weren't going to be in his inner circle.
Yeah.
And
because she and others would question things, but they'd go to the leadership to help them with their concerns. So anytime anyone had a question about leaving, or is this good or bad, or maybe I shouldn't try to recruit somebody into this thing or whatever, you would go upline. You'd go to somebody who'd give you an EM and basically head fuck you back into the belief system.
When you say EM, what do you mean by that? You said it a few times in the
sure.
vow.
So an EM is called an exploration of meaning, and it's kind of like you'd go to your coach with something and you'd say, I'm having a trouble with this. And it's actually, I was thinking about it with the podcast that you sent me where you're giving advice to somebody, and you're giving advice to this woman who is in a relationship. Do you remember the one that you sent me where she's like talking about this addict that she can't, right? And I mean, if I EM'd her, it would be like, what's the downside to letting this go? Like, there's clearly something that she has with her ego to not admit that there's like, she's saving him and can't, like, you asked, basically you EM'd her. You EM'd her without even knowing how to do it.
So is EM like a cult term or something that Keith made up? Or
no, he made it up. It's called an exploration of meaning. It's basically a session with a EMP, an exploration of meaning practitioner, where they would help you evolve an issue. And it could just be like something you're struggling with, but usually it was a stimulus response. So for her, that person you were giving advice to, it might be like, every time he comes back into my life, even though I know it's bad for me, I let him back in, or whatever. So like a pattern, like what's the pattern? And the goal of an EM was to break the pattern permanently. And a good EM could be done in like half an hour, where you could break a pattern you've been doing your whole life. This is why I loved ESP so much. It was so efficient. You could have an issue that you were always doing your whole life, and in half an hour, the pattern's done. But an EM is a tool. So if I have a goal to manipulate you, and I use that tool to my benefit, that's when it becomes a problem. Like, I didn't want to get the brand, but I was EM'd into thinking it was a good idea.
You were manipulated.
I was manipulated.
I mean, truthfully, I don't think EMs work, because there wasn't a consistent modality to it. I think sometimes you could go in and someone could ask you a question that you go, oh, that made me more aware of something. And then, oh, it worked. But you sat down with another EM practitioner and with the same issue, and they take you down a totally different path.
It didn't work in that it wasn't laid out scientifically enough to make it duplicatable.
Which is what it claimed to do.
What it claimed. It was supposed to be duplicatable.
To me, I stopped getting them just because I felt like, unless someone was going to ask me a question that really was for my growth and not for what they wanted me to do, it had that feel to it, and I stopped getting them.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because like you mentioned on the podcast, it's like I kind of joke when we do our Ask Nick episodes, where it's just like, I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist, I'm a guy with an opinion. You might find it helpful, you might not. Here we go. And that's kind of the point where it's like, it sounds like they were trying to make it like this. They gave it a name, and like there was a science behind it, and it was going to do this. And a lot of people who call up in the podcast will admit later, like, they don't take the advice right away, or they may never take it, or it's just like they call in. It's certainly entertaining. Some of them thank me for it. Some of them have come back on and said that I took that advice, but 6 months later, after I didn't listen to you. And to Nippy's point, like, they might come on my podcast, and then for the 20 minutes they're talking to me, like, oh, you're right, you totally read me. And then like they still don't want to do what I told them to do, so they go talk to their girlfriend and says like, fuck that, like, go get yours, girl. And then they're like, yeah, okay, I'll listen to my friend, because
no,
Nick,
I thought I texted you this. I thought you gave really, really good advice. It's like, that's exactly the advice that I would give. Now, here's the thing. I do not think she's going to follow it, because you didn't get to which you can't, but this is in ESP terms. Like, if I was in ESP watching you do that, I'd be like, you didn't get to the thing underneath her. This is probably from childhood with her, where she feels like there's something missing in her, that if she can save everybody, then everything will be okay, and she'll feel good about herself. And she wanted that guy to choose her over his addiction. It's not going to happen.
Well, that's when I tell him to go talk to a therapist.
Right.
Exactly. It's like, I'm not a doctor. This is what I think.
You're not a doctor. The advice was perfect. I just don't think she's going to take it, because it's more important for her to be the savior and feel validated by his, she wants him to cheat. Anyway, we don't have to go into
Yeah.
that. My
But
point
that's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
Tell her to see a therapist.
yeah, but the point is that most people don't take advice because they have some deep-seated issue, and unless they go see a therapist, they're just going to repeat their patterns over and over and over again.
All that said, Nick, you sit down with a volume of people over 10 to 12 years, and they sit down with you with something going on. You figure out relatively quickly that human beings aren't that mysterious as we think.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all very
You've probably
similar.
seen that.
Yeah. And I could sit down with someone and I could hear them start talking about what was going on. I go, oh, I got this. Just because the volume of people that I had to sit down with and talk to. And there's one particular, and you can take logic classes in any college, but there's one module that we had that really shifted my thinking. It was called assumptions and presuppositions. And I got very, very good at hearing people's assumptions and presuppositions about when they were open their mouths. So I could hear it. So I would hear it. And that's all I need to hear. I didn't need to hear their story. So I'd let them, run out of gas when they tell a story. And I go back and ask a question that addressed their assumption. They go, how'd you know to ask that? Yeah. And I would be like, oh shit, now they think I'm some mystical seer. And I felt really, really fucking uncomfortable. Like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, dude, well, and I would go, look.
It looked like magic. If someone was good at it,
all you had to do is connect with and hear their assumptions about what they were saying and just get them to think about it differently, which they had never done.
Yeah.
So for you to go in with a direct question on their assumptions about what they were doing, they felt, but that's what I recognized was being done to me after a while. And
Nancy and Lauren were good at that.
This is what I recognize. Like, this isn't rocket science. This is just figure out the assumptions and presupposition that are running this person's life. Right. Like, I need this thing, and be like, well, what if you didn't need that? They go, how'd you know to ask that? Well, you told me when you sat down in the first 30 seconds and then you talked, everything was based on that assumption. That's all I had to catch.
Can you give an example of that? Sorry. I like,
well,
people know that.
I don't know. Like, they come in and they go, well, I'll give you an example of how it worked in Goals Lab. The Goals Lab is what I love to run. And when someone would sit down, they go, I'd say, it'd be like a 5-year, 1 year, 3 year, 3 month goal. And they go something to the effect of, well, what do you want to be in 5? Well, I kind of want to be like, and when they said kinda, I knew I had them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because kinda to me, or sorta, or words like that were portals into their belief system and their psychology about themselves and how they go after their goals. They kind of, sorta go after their goals. Right.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that was just like what I was helping them become aware of. And if they could own that, and I would check in with them weekly, that's what I was working with them on. So it wasn't rocket science, but to someone who doesn't know that, that's very, very helpful. And someone who's, like I can be that for someone who's coming to me weekly, and I can go, look, you said this last week, and I would remember. And I actually wanted people to go out and make this program work for them.
And we're bringing an outside awareness. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say what's interesting about that, because like everything we just talked about could be a positive thing. It's a tool, like Nippy said. These are resources and tactics that have been studied and proven.
It's in books.
Yes, it's in books. And then it's like Keith knew this and then said, this is how I kind of almost get people to trust me, or like you said, almost feel like, oh, he sees my soul. Like he really understands me. And then that's almost like, and then if you have bad intentions, then you can take that and then, get them to do what you want. It sounds like.
And I got the weebie jeezies when people would feel like, oh, I'm like, nah, look, just go learn it.
But that's also why people are still invested. They're like, but the tools are so good, and like they're out there saying,
get them from a fucking YouTube video.
So what do you feel like? So NXIVM is like known as a sex cult. Is that how you guys see it? What was Keith's Keith's probably goal is ultimately power, I guess, and money and sex. And I know that's one thing you had. His name escapes me, but on your podcast, he talked about ultimately, like any narcissist, that ultimately what they want is money, sex, and power. But like, what was he trying to get NXIVM to be, other than like having sex with some of the women? Was there a goal in terms of what he even, without acknowledging it being a cult? Like, what was NXIVM's goal? To make money? Like, what was the business operated on?
Can I get this one, Nip?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Well, we had to all come to terms with the fact there's what we thought it was and then what it actually was, right? And we thought it was a personal development program designed to help people have more self-awareness, make better decisions, be the best version of themselves, all those cliches. And then what we came to realize is actually a criminal enterprise. So the sex cult term is shitty in a lot of ways, because 99% of the people who were in NXIVM weren't part of that. I met my husband. That was the depth of the sex cult part of it for us. But the closer that you get to Keith and the inner circle and the harem, that's where the deviant stuff was happening. Now, sex in and of itself isn't a problem, right? I think we can all agree on that. But when at least when I joined, I was told he was celibate. He was a renunciate, didn't take any money from the program. He lived like a monk, very simply. And, I guess one of the reasons why I was so mad when I left is because I was out there vouching for this guy, and he was back in Albany having threesomes with all of the, inner circle. And that's why he was late for meetings, by the way, because that's what he was doing. And it was like, if you want to do that, if you want to have a polyamorous lifestyle and teach personal development, then put that on your website, but don't say you're one thing and do another. And that's the deception. And that's the lie. So in many ways, the sex cult thing was good in that it shone a light on it through the media, because, who doesn't like to talk about a sex cult? But it was also really bad for people on the outside who were like, but I'm just part of this goals program, and now I'm part of a sex cult. Like, that's really upsetting for people. So, I've been saying recently, like, okay, it was a sex cult and it wasn't a sex cult. It was both. But ultimately, we found out it was a sex cult from the beginning. So I think, and we've learned that Keith had a polyamorous lifestyle since before NXIVM, and he kind of kept it on the DL so that he could grow this thing, and eventually brought more and more people into it. And his little harem grew, but they were all kept, they basically agreed to be quiet about it.
Well, also the people around him, the women around him, we underestimated their capacity to lie about who Keith was. And they were also pimping for him.
Yeah, he rarely pursued women. He got the women around him to get the women to come to him.
Which, this is all stuff we found out, when the general public found out.
In the trial, mostly.
As well. So, that to me was, to find out you were aligned with something, in addition with the embarrassment and shame of being conned, which I don't think we spent too much time there, because we were pretty much in a dogfight, for 6 months after we left. But to find out the stuff, whenever it was a year or two later after, and to find out some of the women that were around him that Sarah and I would see when we come to town, they were being abused. And these are little girls, Nick. Like these are
like underage.
Some of them were and had been abused since they were underage.
Yeah. That's what came out in the trial. One of the women was 15 when he started.
These were good people, still are good people, but like we were around them and didn't know this was going on. They seem
oftentimes they seemed miserable, but we didn't know why. We thought we just thought that they were working through stuff.
Did they also feel like they had like this secret, like they were keeping a secret for him, so they had this power and that made them feel special?
I think so. I think some of them. I can see that with Allison and some of the other women, some of the women that are still in, that they felt like,
I don't think the ones that were underage necessarily felt that. I mean, there's an arrested development, I think, that goes on if that's the only person you've been with since 15 or 16 or we don't know. I mean,
a lot of the women that he got when they were late teens, early 20s. Like I joined when I was 27, turning 28. And I think that's one of the things that saved me in the end, is that somewhere intuitively I kept him at arm's length.
Mm-hmm. It's nuts. I actually,
it is nuts.
Yeah, I was doing some more, research, and I actually recently there was this interview in this article by Danielle Roberts, Dr. Danielle Roberts. Do you guys know her?
Yeah. Oh yeah. She did my branding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess you do. She recently gave an interview. It sounds like she's still a believer or in it, or maybe that's not true, but at least still defending the act of branding, as if like
correct.
They all wanted to do that in the moment. It was, and that to me, like watching the interview seemed to be the scariest part of it all, because I don't know if nuance is the right word, because it's like you could see that she believed everything that she was saying.
Yeah.
Like that she wasn't lying, that she was like, she believed that like, maybe you were laughing or someone else was laughing, or maybe you did agree to it, but like there was no recognition of like what you had to say and the like everything that led up to that moment of getting like you to go along with it, that kind of manipulation and training. And where do you come to terms with that, or what is that like, or how can people become more aware of it? Because it was crazy watching the interview.
God. Can I answer that one, Nippy? And then you can.
Yeah, I have my diatribe.
I know. I want to just to say, because I first of all have to say, like, it's incredibly sad to me that she's still drinking the Kool-Aid. By the way, I don't know if you saw my shirt. It says "Beware of the Kool-Aid."
Yeah.
It's my cult shirt. She has to believe that what she did was good because she's a doctor. I believe at her core, she's a good person. She wants to help people. She got led astray by a very manipulative man, and so she has to stick to the story. In response to they wanted it. That's like saying, like a rapist saying she wanted it. Would you think I, a married woman, would want Keith's initials on my body? Fuck no. You know, that was kept from me. The women at the top, the top line women under Keith in the women's sorority, were all in love with Keith. If they want to get Keith's initials on their body, you know, weird, but all the power to them if that's what they want. For the other women, we did not want that. They lied to us. They said they were getting a tattoo. They said it was going to be the symbol for the elements. Nobody would have agreed to it had they been honest. Said, okay, listen, we're doing this women's group, but because Keith started it, we're going to put his initials on your body as a tribute. Like,
and they didn't tell you that. Yeah.
No. So she says that we wanted it. Was I laughing in the room? I cried. I was in horror. Did I laugh at some points during that 5-hour procedure with all the other women? Yes.
Yeah. We also had awkward laugh all the time.
Awkward laugh. I totally laugh. And I even talked about this in my book. Like, I had to gaslight myself to stay there, to not, because I mean, obviously, if I knew what I know now and I saw that, I'd be like, are you kidding? I'm not doing that. I'm not putting that on my body. There's no way, you know, but I had in my head Keith's words, the indoctrination of, this is why women need this empowerment group, because we don't stay to our word. We break secrets. We're indulgent. We can't stand through pain like men do. We have to, like, which is also total bullshit, because women give birth, and that's the most pain you can ever imagine. Anyway, my point being, Danielle, that interview with Danielle was last week. It's been actually a pretty heavy duty NXIVM week, because that came out, and her and like 8 other women from the Dossier Project came out with their statement, basically saying that this whole thing, Keith's in jail because of Sarah Edmondson's false narrative. And to which I would respond, even if this was a totally false narrative on my part, like, what about all the other women, all the other victims that came forward and did testimony in the trial? Like, they have to deny so many people's perspective and truth to hold on to their perspective. So it's been a heavy week, I'll tell you that right now.
Are they still recruiting?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't, into what? Like, I don't.
I don't know. Yeah, what is NXIVM? Yeah. What is NXIVM now, if anything? I mean, does it exist?
There's just a group of people who believe that Keith is innocent. I mean, they're not doing anything other than trying to defend him.
Yeah, they've just doubled down on their narrative, and it's an interesting thing, because if I could press a button and have those people go back to their lives and live fruitful lives, I'd press it, right? And I think anytime you come out with something that's contrary to their negative, they become more emboldened to dig their heels in and fight. And Sarah, for some reason, has emerged as the figurehead to fight in this. And
probably because I've been most vocal.
More than Mark, because I feel like you and Mark were kind of like, it seemed like we were watching the Viall, the two people leading the charge against NXIVM and Keith.
Definitely both of us, but right now they seem to be wanting to disprove my narrative or whatever, or just people.
I think it's personally, I think it's revenge. I mean, revenge masquerading as nobility, and to double down on their narrative is an insult to so many people's intelligence. You know, they issued the judge an affidavit about the corruption in the case. It's just, if they understood the scope of how things work, they'd recognize that they're throwing rocks at tanks, and they're not really going to get far. This thing was going to end one way or the other once my wife came home with a brand in her pubic area. Oh. And I told Sarah, if she had come back with as much a mark on her arm, I would have been in there with a baseball bat. So it wasn't like,
Say what you said today about Danielle. Like even if we did, oh, that's the other thing is that she said we wanted it. There's a videotape of Keith saying to Allison, set up the branding so that the women ask to be branded so it looks consensual.
So yeah, they have
like
they have to ignore it.
She can't. That's cognitive dissonance. She can't take that in.
Yeah,
she can't take it in.
Where are like Nancy, Lauren? I know Allison's up for sentencing. Danielle, like where are they now? Are who's going to jail? Who's not going to jail? And where did they draw the line between people who were victimized by the cult and people who were part of this?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I don't think they're done drawing it. I know Nancy, Lauren, and Kathy Russell and Allison Mack pled guilty.
And they're awaiting sentencing.
They're awaiting sentencing. And what they'll get sentenced, I don't know, because it depends. This judge really came down hard. And I think he came down hard on Keith for obvious reasons, but he came down hard on Claire Bronfman because Claire Bronfman was doubling down on, she didn't think Keith was bad.
Yeah. She pled guilty, but she said, but he's a good man and I wouldn't change anything. And wasn't willing to denounce him.
And he just said, listen, you don't get it. Spend 6 years to think about it. And
8 years, almost 8 years.
Yeah,
she got
and counting. Yeah.
We thought she was going to get 2.
So I think that's going to send a message to how Nancy, Lauren, and Kathy show up to court.
Because isn't Allison up? She could face up to 40. I think it was. I mean, whether she gets it or not, but that could be the max.
I don't think she will.
Yeah,
I don't think she will. Because I think she's had we'll see. I mean, she's had a long time to be away from him, and hopefully have her family and other people come in and kind of talk sense into her.
We've heard that she's woken up. Actually.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Because you're either drinking the Kool-Aid or you're not. And once you wake up, you can't go back. You really can't.
I want to close things out in terms of like big picture on a macro level. You talked a little bit about Tony Robbins. Obviously, people have questions between cults, religion, and a lot of things. When I watched The Vow, I thought of one of the companies I worked for, US Cellular. It's a regional cell phone carrier back in the day. And their CEO at the time, they talked a lot about culture. Culture was big to them. And a lot of times we were like, hey, you drinking the Kool-Aid of US Cellular? Because it was very much about, a lot of people would get up at these mediums and talk about how US Cellular changed their life. It wasn't a job. It was a purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And so where are the distinctions between these self-help groups and this euphoric feeling people get from like a Tony Robbins seminar or religion or and things like that? Because Keith, for example, sometimes the criticism could be, you see Keith, he took these practical things that you read in books and these manipulation texts, some of which could be used in a good way, and he turned it and used it against people. You could say the same things about the Bible, religion. Religion's weaponized all the time. And so where do we draw the line between what is a religious and it's good versus a cult versus a self-help group versus a cult, et cetera, et cetera?
That's a really good question. It's actually why we decided to start our podcast a little bit culty, because, we acknowledged that we were in a cult back in the day, but we thought it was a thriving group of happy, successful people wanting to support each other. And we were even taught that a cult is something where there's a deception, where there's a lie. And we just couldn't see what that was. We couldn't see what was the bad thing. So, we now know that there's like a continuum from being like very healthy, a group where you can leave at will, where you can, if you have a doubt, you can question it without being gaslit, where you understand the mechanisms of how the company works, the group works, and it's all transparent, to on the far other end of the continuum, where it's a totalitarian dictatorship, where there's usually one person, often a man, a very charismatic leader, and you can't question, without being punished or hurt in some way, and everything in between. And there's various red flags that we've been talking about and that we've learned that would say, hey, this is. Now it's gone from personal development to a cult. And often there's things like you're dependent, like you can't function without the group. And also, like, one thing the red flag that we always tell people is like, is there any allegations against the group? Are there anything against the leader? And if there is, how does the leadership respond to that? if they say, well, that's just a bunch of craziness, or that's just a smear campaign, like that's not enough of an answer. Where there's smoke, there's fire is generally the route. But I would also say to people, if it feels off, it probably is off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we were kind of messed with, is that they said, if you're feeling the desire to leave, which I did in my first few days, it just means that you're hitting up against an issue and you came here to work through your issues. So stick it out.
Yeah,
right?
that manipulation was crazy, especially when you guys were talking about, it was the collateral or giving these, what'd you guys call them? Like gifts or sacrifices?
Collateral to make sure you kept quiet and kept your word.
But that's not what they called it. But that's what it was. Right.
What it was is blackmail, but they did call it collateral.
They did call it collateral.
Yeah. But collateral had been part of the culture of NXIVM for a while. People put down collateral, like, I'm going to put down $500, and if I nag my husband one more time, I'm giving it to charity. Yeah. That would probably work for us. Hey, babe.
But it's interesting that they make it a good thing first, and all of a sudden it turns into like this, like, send me a nude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's all that's. Just to finish that real quick, anyone listening going like, what, you gave a nude photo? I get it. It sounds fucked up. How could you get to that point? That's why we decided to do the vow, why I wrote my book, so people could understand how I got from I'm taking a personal development program to I'm giving a nude to my best friend to I'm, like, it happens in stages. It doesn't happen overnight. It took me 12 years to get to that point. Talking about long game, Keith long game. I would never have agreed to any of this if I knew where it was going. So,
but like even then on the show, they were talking about, like, whether it was Lauren who she pushed back by saying, it's control for you. You have to let go. Like, they were trying, like, it was like this seminar about letting go. So, like, to let go, you need to, like, do this crazy shit, because like it was just like, well, I guess, like, well, when you
don't
say
ask
it
any
like
questions.
That,
I committed to working my issues. So that means I can't ask any questions and just go along with it, because that will help me with my control issues.
Yeah. It's
I mean, add a little too. It's like there's destructive cults, and then there's just like the chess club. I mean, the chess club can be, can
be a little culty
vibe to it. But if you listen to, I think it's in Stephen Hassan's, anything that addresses control over your behavior, information, thought, or intellectual domain, emotions is emotions is normally designed to get you to control you. And one of the things too is, we're bringing experts on, but I think, one of the things that, and thank you for having us on here, is, Sarah and I can kind of provide a stop gap, because normally if you're talking to a cold expert, it's probably too late. Either you or someone you love has been affected. And if you can identify these behaviors and what it looks like and sounds like, you can just kick the tires a little bit on something and then move on, which is, I wish I'd done, and I'd had something like the vow or a podcast, back 2001 when I first did my first training. Before
podcasts even existed.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's to look for.
Podcasts are going to save people's lives, I think, for a lot of things.
Well, also collectively, these kinds of behaviors, are being brought to a collective consciousness and being outed in a lot of domains. So,
less acceptable now.
The more you can articulate, the more you can talk about it, the better.
For sure, yeah. Because I mean, you mentioned, like, on that one podcast I listened to, like, just the rise of conspiracy theories have a kind of a cult-like following to them, and the same type of messaging. And so, like, this stuff is out there and it's prevalent. And whether you think you're going to join a cult, I think it's good to be kind of mindful of these manipulation tactics that can be used by anyone, right? Whether you're in a cult or not. Like, it's, we often want to be better, and we have a sense of purpose and righteousness about us, and we have to be, unfortunately, we live in a world where people try to take advantage of that. And that can be pretty scary. Any final thoughts before we let you go? This has been really fascinating, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I can only imagine how vulnerable it is for you guys to relive this back and talk about it. And it's certainly brave of you guys to just be so open and honest about it, because I think, like you said, a lot of people just, like, pretend, I'm assuming, never happened. You mentioned a lot of people who leave cults don't do the work. They might have, but then because it's like, well, fuck it, to do the work, I have to say I was in a cult, and that no one wants to say that. You
have to swallow your pride,
especially a sex cult.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. I kind of, like I have a hard time being like, I don't know, like why. I went on this crazy reality TV show. It was a little weird. There's some culty stuff to that, but like whatever, it's fine. It wasn't a cult, So
just so you know, what you just said is exactly how I felt when I was agreeing to DOS. I didn't think that Lauren was actually my master. I was like, this is something I'm agreeing to as a sort of thing that we're gonna, we're all on the same page, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
even when Nippy was like, "Oh, I first went to my meeting, he had his hands crossed." I literally thought back to my like first couple days on set. We're like, "All right, I'm here for this fucking show. Let's see where it goes. Like, I'll give it a shot." And like next thing you know, I'm like, "I love you," So it's like, oh, weird.
Marry me.
Marry me. I can't live without you.
See, we have way more in common than I ever would have thought.
Yeah.
And we also both love pimples, which I learned from your last episode.
Love popping
gross.
pimples. Yeah.
So gross.
Nippy has not had a good one recently, and I'm very disappointed.
It's such a gratifying thing.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Popping.
I just wanted to wrap up on
it's as offensive as that drawer being open.
I'm with Chrissy.
I think in any relationship, you have to have one pimple popper and one person who's not a fan. Anyways, you were saying, Sarah, yeah.
No, it just is nice to wrap up on
it's on my back.
On a lighter note, because I think ultimately the last thing I'd want to say is that if anyone's listening who has been in a cult or an abusive relationship, because it's the same process, is that that there's hope, that there's stuff you can do to heal, and that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I'd say that like what we went through is probably the worst experience of my entire life, but we're both way stronger for it. And I believe that turning trauma into purpose or into a roadmap for, recovery is the only way out. Otherwise, it can be quite a dark place to live in. And I just hope to be that light for other people.
Yeah. Well, it's a great note to end on. What's next? Is there definitely a season 2 of The Vow?
Oh yeah, season 2. Because where you left off is where Keith gets arrested, right?
Well, yeah, it literally ended with Keith being like, "What do you want to talk about?" Like,
right?
Yeah.
So there's the whole trial.
Let's do this again.
Everything. Yeah, let's do it again.
We're not in it that much though.
We don't know because they've been
you were pregnant. And
I was pregnant.
I went to like 3 to 5 days of the trial and was filmed there, but then I
think that they have a lot of they have people that they didn't get season 1, like a lot of the Mexican contingent. I know they have interviews with like the more of the inner circle. I think it'll be really interesting. I mean, keep in mind when we watched The Vow, we were spectators to a lot of things that we'd never seen before either. So I mean, I'm sure it'll be great. I really respect and trust the filmmakers. So stay tuned for that.
Well, this has been very fascinating and hopefully enlightening for some people, but it just kind of goes to show, how we have to be careful. We have to be on our toes, and sometimes with our own kind of righteous endeavors, we can get ourselves in trouble.
Yep.
But one thing I wanted to say, it was really interesting that you guys mentioned on your podcast, in terms of if you do find yourself interacting with someone you think might be subject to an environment that could be toxic or cult-like, in terms of instead of convincing them that they're in a cult, get them to convince you why they're in something good or not in a cult. I thought was a really interesting way to start addressing those situations, because I think I always get asked questions like, what do you do if you mentioned even Sarah, it's toxic relationships. If my girlfriend's dating someone who's terrible, how do I get her to see it? And I think that happens a lot in friendships and relationships, and just getting them to justify what is good about it. It seems to be a much healthier approach, and the way you guys articulated that was very helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah, definitely don't attack people and make them feel like shit. That doesn't help. So many people were. Yeah, I mean, the seeds that were planted for me to wake up were people that just asked me questions.
Wild stuff. Thanks so much, guys. Where can people find you so they can digest more of the stuff that you are putting out there?
I'm at Sarah Edmondson for Instagram, and Nippy's at Anthony Ames 11 on Instagram. And our website is a little bit culty.com, same Instagram handle. And that drops every Monday. And I wrote a book, which is on Amazon and Audible and all those places, called Scarred. And The Vow, we don't know when The Vow comes out, right, babe? Or do we?
No, we don't know.
It's a mystery at this point. But
Well, I mean, a
hopefully
lot of
within
it's
year.
dependent on the court. And
Yeah, it'll
so
probably
I think-
it'll depend on when people get sentenced.
Yeah, that might happen sooner than later.
We
We
hope
don't
so.
know.
I don't know what's taking so long.
COVID.
That
That's
Yeah.
Oh
what's
yeah,
taking so long.
COVID, and also maybe
You
they're-
know that
But
pandemic that's been going on?
It almost sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it almost sounds like there are, when it comes to sentencing, you guys clearly, and I get why, are invested in what those outcomes are. And would it be accurate to say that there are some people, like, do you want them all to go to jail for the max, or some people you're rooting for some leniency and others you're hoping they get the max, or is it somewhere in between?
I think the people that got the stiffest sentence got them already.
Okay.
I think that's why they were the first two.
Gotcha.
The others, it depends where they are. If they double down on being like, Keith was whatever, I think the judge is going to go, dude, this guy, you're not fit.
But what do you guys think in terms of,
Oh.
do you have an opinion?
I don't know what the legal, like I don't have, it really depends. Like Nippy said, if they wake up and can admit that they did wrong, it was bad to lie, and that Keith is a sociopath or whatever they need to figure out to wake up. A little bit of jail time, I think, would be good, but I don't think they need the max. But I don't have the legal wherewithal to say what they deserve. I don't have the references for
I
that.
don't think Kathy
But not
Russell
40 years.
I don't think
Not-
Kathy Russell should go to jail. I think she just got caught in the middle of something. She's peripheral. Lauren and Nancy, I think you run the red light, you pay the fine.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. The whole I didn't know thing, doesn't really hold water for me.
when you do those the behaviors that they did.
Yeah, I
they
think
did really-
Allison Mack has been piled on disproportionately.
Sure, she's the most notable person, so that's going to happen.
So, she certainly doesn't need.
I trust the judge. I really do. I think he's got it.
good
He knows what's
pulse
going
it.
on.
Yeah. So I'm not rooting for anyone to go through more pain, I
Yeah.
guess is another thing too.
I'm rooting for people to
So-
wake up, including Danielle.
I mean, it's obviously very personal for you guys. So once again, thank you guys for sharing your story and taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you for the great
thanks for having us.
questions and the thoughtful questions. And,
Yeah,
and,
they're great. Those are
like
some
I
of the best
said,
questions you've had.
Yeah, really good questions. I loved listening to your advice column. I think you give great advice, and you would make a great EMP one day.
Yeah.
Great. I'll just. But with
trainers.
There's a t-shirt.
with
There's a t-shirt for you, Nick.
I could make a cult if I wanted to, No,
I think you probably could.
but that's it's funny. I have a friend, actually, a former Bachelor producer who has Keith vibes, and I was like, hey, how many people have told you that you could have done what Keith did if he wanted to? He's like, a lot. And he's also the type of person who knows he can start a cult, and he is really smart, but he also is a good guy, but he knows he could do it, and it's
he knows he can start a cult, but he's just like,
yeah.
I'm too good a person for that.
No, I mean, it's just like, no. And honestly, there might have been a time where he was like, fuck it, I'll start a cult. But he's older now, and he's humbled himself, and he's also not a sociopath or a narcissist, but he could definitely do it.
Ingredient.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's
You would
just
have to grow your hair out.
he has the beard, he's got the hair. I don't have
Really?
the hair
Yeah.
for a cult leader.
By the way, did you see Nick Jonas playing Keith Raniere on Saturday Night Live last week?
yeah.
Oh my God. That made my day. I feel really good about that, especially because his outfit is made famous by a photo that I think, I don't know for sure, but I took of him in 2005, that blue shirt with the volleyball outfit. That's I was there when that happened 15 years ago. So now it's legitimized. I think that's the closest I'm ever going to get to Saturday Night Live as an actor. So I feel like I just have to relish in this moment.
Well, same. They did a parody of me once. I was the bearded hunk.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, yeah, that's cool. It's not the closest I'll ever get. They weren't really making fun of me, but they weren't not. It was,
I think it's a real tribute to what you've created.
Yeah.
Nick.
So anyways, thank you guys. Well, we can't thank Sarah and Nippy enough for taking the time out of their day to talk about obviously something that's very personal, very vulnerable to their lives, and as fascinating as this is, I think it is an important conversation to have because the cults exist. They are out there. There are people who want to take advantage of us, our money, our well-being, and it's great to feel like we belong to something, and it's great to feel like we have culture and we belong to a passionate community. But how do we make sure that we protect ourselves from getting into cults? Because I think one thing we learned about this is that it can happen to anyone. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to send in your reviews, only if they're 5 stars. Honestly, we really don't have time for your critical feedback, but we thank you for listening either way. Love you guys. We will see you back on Monday for a kick-ass episode of Ask Nick. Tell your friends. We love you. Bye.